From the 11 Alive studios, this is The Georgia Vote with Faith Jesse and Zach Merchant.
Well, good Sunday morning and welcome in. Georgia is gearing up for a big election year in 2026 that is already starting to feel closer and closer.
And it's only 2025, right?
I know.
Just checking. One of the biggest prizes, Jon Ossoff's seat in the U.S. Senate. Democrats want to send him back to Washington for another term, and Republicans, of course, want to unseat him. And the field of potential Republican challengers is starting to take shape. Republican State Insurance Commissioner John King entered the race this week. Last week, Republican Congressman Buddy Carter of Savannah, now living on St. Simon's Island, launched his bid for the same U.S. Senate seat. Other Republicans like Congressman Mike Collins and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger are also reportedly eyeing this Senate race. Already confirmed not to be running are Georgia Governor Brian Kemp and Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene.
And it is not just Republicans who are gearing up for a primary battle. Plenty of Republicans, or rather Democrats, I should say, will be in the same situation, including Everton Blair, a Democratic former Gwinnett County School Board chair who launched a campaign to unseat incumbent Democratic Congressman David Scott. So you're running to challenge someone within your own party.
That's right.
Why?
You know, this is a moment where I think we're realizing that we need stronger fight. And for me in this district at this moment, I think that our congressman is running out of steam at a time when we really need to be firing on all cylinders.
And you can hear much more of our interview with Blair on next weekend's edition of The Georgia Vote. Or if you don't want to wait until then, you can watch the extended interview right now on 11 Alive Plus.
Also this week, Georgia Republican Senate Majority Leader and self-proclaimed die-hard MAGA supporter Steve Gooch announced that he is running for Lieutenant Governor. Gooch says that he is unapologetically pro-life, pro-Second Amendment.
Well, also looking for a promotion, that would be State Senator Josh McLaren. He is in his 7th year under the Gold Dome, and the Sandy Springs Democrat recently launched his campaign for Lieutenant Governor. We sit down with him in this week's Sunday Conversation. State Senator Josh McLaren, you have announced you're running for Lieutenant Governor. Why do you want to be Georgia's next Lieutenant Governor?
Well, we need leaders who have energy. We need leaders who are honest and courageous and tell the truth. And I think one of the biggest problems we have right now in a chaotic Trump administration, we don't have the state leadership that we need to be standing up to some of that chaos and calling it like it is and asking for a different course. So the tariffs are just the tip of the iceberg.
We're taping this conversation on Monday. Earlier this morning, the United States dropped tariffs on China from 145% to 30%, and in turn, China dropped their tariffs on American goods to 10%. Do you think this latest evolution in the trade and tariff conversation is a good thing for the United States? Is this a win by the Trump administration?
I mean, when a chaos agent acts in a slightly less chaotic way, is that a win? I mean, the 30% tariff is still a historic tariff that's higher than I think almost any other that Trump is trying to impose. That is a cost that the businesses who are increasing their prices will be passing along to consumers. So starting at a crazy number like 140 doesn't make it any better. When you land at a number like 10, it is still a trade war that serves nothing but Trump's ego. And so I think this is one of the things that voters are really fed up with. People are exhausted by partisan politics. People are sick of the fighting. But at the same time, people are sick of somebody's ego or authoritarian impulses being what drives all of our public policy. Nobody wants a country that serves the whims of one man, or at least a vanishingly small percentage of voters want that. And so,
I hate to cut you off, but
yeah.
I just want to be clear.
Sure.
You mentioned authoritarian impulses.
Yeah,
That's a heavy, weighty thing to say.
It is.
Do you think President Donald Trump is an authoritarian leader?
I think that he'd like to be. I think that we have a long and storied tradition of democracy in this country that prevents him from doing the things that he would want to do. I think having leaders who get it, who understand this is just too chaotic and we need to return to some sense of normalcy and growing the economy in the way that we're used to and not this kind of crazy bend off to the side. I think that's really what Georgians are looking for in their state government as well.
A moment ago you said people are tired of the partisanship and the partisan fighting. You also just spent a lot of time talking about your concerns about what you describe as President Trump's authoritarian impulses.
Right.
Those seem to be two things, kind of opposite sides of the coin. How do you balance those two?
You have to stand up for what you believe in. And everything I just said to you, I believe. I think that Trump is one of the biggest threats to American democracy that we've ever seen in this lifetime, and in our way of life, for all the reasons we've been talking about. And so I still have to say that, but I don't have to say that in a way where I'm personally, super angry and worked up and trying to, undermine my friends and colleagues who I work with in the Capitol.
Is that a tough needle to thread? Because you and I both know there are going to be people who hear you say that about President Trump, and they're going to find that very inflammatory.
They may. They may. But I think part of it is having a good sense of humor. And part of it is valuing people. The reason that I criticize President Trump in this way is because I care about small businesses. I care about whether the economy can keep functioning the way that people expect it to keep growing.
From where you sit, what is the number one problem facing Georgia right now?
The number one problem is that this economy doesn't work for everybody. And there are people who work 2 to 3 jobs just to have the basic quality of life that our parents and grandparents enjoyed in a lot of cases.
That is just part of our conversation. You can find the full interview right now on 11 Alive Plus. You can download it on your TV and watch for free.
Okay, it's time now for our political roundtable.
And we have 3 returning panelists. Let's go down the line here. Deanna Harris, a Republican strategist. Kyle Gomez Lineweber, involved in Democratic politics with Galileo Impact Fund. Greg Bluestein, AJC politics reporter. It's so good to have all 3 of you back. It's been it's becoming the cliche, but it's true, another busy week in Georgia politics.
No slow days.
No slow days at all. Even though, Greg, typically this time of year is usually a little slow, right?
Yeah, there's no summer doldrums here. There's no sleepy summer for us political junkies. And this was a really big week. In the last couple days, we had Governor Brian Kemp staying out of the Senate race, Marjorie Taylor Greene staying out of the Senate race, 2 Republicans getting in that race, Congressman Buddy Carter, Insurance Commissioner John King. The big question, though, is we know they're not going to be the last. Who's next? And we know that Donald Trump and Brian Kemp met at a secret location in Washington a week ago to talk about getting behind a unifying Republican candidate. We don't know if they will be able to do that, but we know they were talking about a few candidates there.
And that was a story that you broke, Greg. You've covered politics in Georgia for a long time. Is it likely that a consensus candidate can emerge? And then we want to bring Deanna in here too and get a Republican voice.
I'm really curious what Deanna says, because I'm a skeptic in general. I've lived through the 2020 campaign, the 2021 runoffs, the 2022 campaign, seeing all the internal Republican strife and seeing, frankly, the feuding and the friction between President Trump and Brian Kemp over Kelly Loeffler, over that 2020 race where they couldn't unify behind Kelly Loeffler, and it ended up being a messy special election campaign. But
and Greg, I'm sorry to cut you off, but is there, Deanna, maybe a lesson learned by the Republican Party that they don't want a replay of that?
So that's what I was going to say. I think there is a lesson learned. The National Party has seen how strong the governor is on his own, without the state party help, without the RNC help, and how he's been able to kind of move the needle on his votes across the state. So that's a big deal, and I think that's the reason why Trump is wanting to merge with him and possibly get behind one candidate to get that Brian Kemp fuel to light the fire and possibly win this election.
And he has polled well. The AJC poll, proof of that. Kyle, I want to ask you this, though. We are starting to see some of these candidates align as MAGA warriors. That's their strategy here. Could Democrats seize on that?
Absolutely, especially now that we know that more and more Americans are seeing this economy as the Trump economy, no longer Biden's economy. There was some reporting that came out of the University of Michigan that showed that consumer confidence is down 30% now compared to January. So I think it'll be important for Democrats like John Ossoff to lean into that while also, divorcing themselves or moving away from the national Democratic brand and showing themselves to be, Democrats who are invested in local and state issues.
Speaking of Democrats, obviously Ossoff is running again for Senate, so that's their guy. For governor, who are you looking at right now? A little slow moving on it, but it's still early. We're only in May in 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously, we know that Jason Estevez is running for governor, who, he's had an interesting career as a state senator, built relationships not just with his Democratic counterparts, but as well some Republicans from across the aisle. Then we're also waiting to see what happens with Keisha Lance Bottoms, Mike Thurmond, former CEO of DeKalb, and of course now there's some rumblings about Stacey Stacey Abrams. So we'll see what happens.
Stacey Abrams ran a third time.
I was going to say, I hope you bring up Stacey Abrams at the end of your list there, because she is the probably the biggest name candidate.
Yeah.
Not yet candidate in this race, but kind of lingering out there. Will she, won't she? We got 20 seconds left. Greg, what do you know about this?
I think she's the sort of break the emergency glass candidate. She has not made any moves towards running, but she has the name recognition, the fundraising network, the backstory, the history, that she could be a very formidable candidate with a snap of the fingers if she decides to get in.
Dana, do you think she should get in?
I think it's time to give someone else a chance, right? To let the new leaders of that party to come forward and figure it out and get on the path to be able to actually present a good campaign. I think her time's up.
Well, we will see. She did tell our Aisha Howard that she was a great reporter and asked me the next question. So on that point, we will be back after the commercial break for some more time with our panel. Welcome back. Georgia Democrats finally have a new leader. Charlie Bailey, a career attorney, faces an uphill battle to turn Georgia blue. He says that he is relying on evidence in his messaging. Here's part of our conversation. What do you say to those who might cast some doubt over your ability to help Democrats have successful campaigns against Republicans when you lost both of your campaigns for AG and Lieutenant Governor?
Well, I would say in 2018, when I was the AG nominee, I got 49% running against an incumbent. Chris Carr didn't give me 49% of the office, but we were able to do that and have that close margin because I know how to run campaigns that get right to the heart of the issue and cut through the noise, speak in a very real, plain-spoken way about the issues that affect people's day-to-day lives.
Have Democrats lost their fight in Georgia?
No, I wouldn't say we've lost our fight, and I think we've got wonderful public servants, and the two senators are, at the top of the list. But I'll speak from my role as chair of the Democratic Party is to show that fight. If it was, I'll just say this: if it was sufficient what we have been doing. If what we had been doing is sufficient, we wouldn't have those poll numbers. So it's clearly not sufficient. We don't need to spend a tremendous amount of time looking backwards, but going forwards, and that's the pertinent question to me, is what are we going to do? We're going to show that.
How strong is Ossoff statewide?
He's very strong. And if you, again, look at the data, you don't have to take my word. I mean, his approval rating is very high. Even in that AJC poll, it sits at 48 or 49%, with another 20% without saying not enough information. That's a lot of room to grow as well. And Senator Ossoff just set records. It was 11 million or something like that he raised in the first quarter. I'm not sure on the exact record, but I'm told there's some sort of record for an off-year first quarter. That is a representation of the strength, and that is based on the work that he's done for the people of Georgia. To try to lower prices, to benefit companies open in Georgia through the Inflation Reduction Act and the CHIPS Act. Famously, a lot of these Republicans like to, probably more than half of the congressional delegation is going to run for this now, the Republican congressional delegation, and they love to say negative things about those pieces of legislation, then they show up at all the ribbon cuttings because they know the impact on people's lives. Where they didn't do it, they voted against those things. John Ossoff made sure they became law for the people of Georgia. So that approval rating, again, empirical data, is based on his work that he's been doing for the people of Georgia. And in contrast to that, you've got this group of, motley group of fools that is racing to defend raising taxes on working people through these tariffs, cutting Head Start, firing people from the CDC, cutting Medicare and Medicaid. All the while, they support the destruction of due process in this country. As you know, and we talked about, I'm a former prosecutor. I've put a lot of people in prison, a lot of dangerous people, and I did that with evidence. The idea that you snatch somebody off the street, haul them off to God knows where without evidence or without a lawyer is about the most un-American thing in the world. They are defending all of that.
And that is just part of our conversation. You can find the full interview right now on 11 Alive Plus. You can download it on your TV for free. We just heard this interview from the new head of the Democratic Party. Kyle, I want to direct this to you. Bailey, he seems extremely confident that he's going to be able to come in here, do the messaging, show the evidence, as he said, as a former prosecutor, and be able to convince Democrats and independents that blue's the way to go. There's an uphill battle for him, though. Do you agree?
Well, I mean, I think it can be both. It's going to be an uphill battle. It's not going to be easy, but I do think it's something that Democrats in the state of Georgia can do and have done in previous election cycles. And I think building our own brand, a state local brand, is going to be really important. And talking about those kitchen table issues and about how they're going to actually drive down prices and improve the cost of living in the state is going to be key in making that argument.
It seems like an education thing here, a messaging thing. But Deanna, I mean, Democrats also tried to stick to messaging in the 2024 race, and that obviously did not turn out in their favor.
And that separated them, a huge line of separation between the Democratic Party and the voters. And that was really why they didn't do well this past cycle. I know that they're hoping ideally they'll do a little bit better for the midterm, but looks like the Republicans are going to maybe make strong and do well, especially if
historically, though, the Republican president, or whoever the president is, their party does not do as well in the midterms.
Well, you know, Trump changes history a lot. So,
and in a I think we can say nonpartisanly, that is true. He is a history-making president.
Yeah.
Deanna, I do want to linger on this point for a moment, though, because there are primaries coming up, and there's been a lot of talk about the hope of many Republicans to avoid a potentially messy primary battle or primary battles. You're talking about the governor's race. You're talking about the U.S. Senate race here, too. Is that a worry that Republicans may get bogged down battling each other and lose sight of the general?
Never. It's just for me, I believe it's just a part of the process. You have to go through that primary process to see where you are, test the waters, get to know the voters, and really bring out the base. I think that's where we'll be able to get voters to come out for the general election to really drive us over the hill, especially for the Senate, right? Because right now we're looking at a 50-50 for the Senate. So with more Republicans involved in the primary, they'll probably be able to touch each area of the state where, you know, normally that wouldn't happen. And so that way we can get that plus 50 to be able to get that seat back.
It's going to be a big race, a very expensive race. Let's switch gears really quick here. We know that Governor Kemp signed a lot of bills this week. Greg, I want to bring you in here. Any surprises to you? Anything that stood out?
Yeah, this was the end of the bill signing period, and the biggest surprise to me was he signed a measure by a now U.S. Treasurer, Brandon Beach, who was then a Republican state senator, allowing Donald Trump and his allies to recoup some of his legal fees from the Fulton County election interference case if Fani Willis ends up getting disqualified from that case. And that was a major bill that some small town conservatives were warning against, because it also applies beyond that case and potentially could bring some huge financial bills from some small rural counties. So I was surprised that he signed that bill, although Brandon Beach and his allies were expecting it, and this is a major favor to Donald Trump.
Also on that bill, money for those who were wrongfully incarcerated, so that money has to come from somewhere, I think $75,000 per year, so.
On this note, we start and we end the same way. We have so much to talk about. Unfortunately, we're going to go to break now. But on 11 Alive Plus, you can see more of our panel on TV. Stay with us. We'll be right back after the break. A Georgia woman was declared brain dead by doctors, but she is still on life support because she's pregnant. Her family says because of Georgia's heartbeat bill, which bans most abortions after about 6 weeks of pregnancy, they have no say in her care.
And this is a case that is drawing national attention. Adriana Smith has been kept alive for over 3 months at Emory Hospital. A CT scan revealed blood clots in her brain when she was 9 weeks pregnant. Well, there's a legal gray area in the state's heartbeat law, forcing her medical team to maintain life support until the baby can survive outside of the womb.
Lawmakers are chiming in now. Congresswoman Nikema Williams, a Democrat, says in part, everyone deserves the freedom to decide what is best for their families, futures, and lives. Instead, anti-abortion politicians like Donald Trump and Governor Brian Kemp are forcing people through unimaginable pain. Meanwhile, Republican State Senator Ed Setzler, who sponsored the 2019 law, told the Associated Press in part, quote, I think it is completely appropriate that the hospital do what they can to save the life of the child. I think this is an unusual circumstance, but I think it highlights the value of innocent human life. I think the hospital is acting appropriately. We, of course, will keep you updated as this story develops.
Well, up next, our voice of the voter isn't even old enough to vote yet, but his influence is powerful. Campaigns already tapping him to mobilize the young vote. This week's Voice of the Voter takes us to Buckhead, where I met with Noah DiBarrasso, an outspoken influencer and internet personality. And at just 13 years old, he's become a major voice for Democrats here in Georgia and across the country. You were born and raised here in Atlanta, just 13 years old, a political influencer. What does that mean to you?
It means to me that I have a platform to speak for those who can't speak for themselves. If a Republican influencer is endorsing conservatives, good on you. If you're a Democrat influencer influencing Democrats, good on you as well, because you're still using your platform. Whether I think you're completely evil for doing so or not, you're still doing your obligation, your black job, if you will. I'm Noah. I am a influencer. They call me an internet personality. I didn't know what that meant, but I'm here for it, whatever.
Why are you so interested in politics at 13?
So I really don't have a choice. Honestly, I never really used to use my platform for political reasons.
We have seen you with Vice President Kamala Harris, her running mate Tim Walz, Joe Biden.
And he said, and by the way, I raised $6,000 for you.
And the list goes on and on. How do you think the elected officials are doing running our country right now?
Right now, statewide, we have a lot of leaders who, quite frankly, don't know what's going on. And it's one thing to say, hey, let me speak to young people to see what they think about it. And it's another thing to just completely ignore it and make assumptions based off your cousin who had this experience on social media and had problems with that.
What are you most concerned about right now?
Honestly, if I'm speaking from as we're approaching 2026, I'm most scared that Democrats are going to avoid influencers and actors and singers who people listen to. You need to talk to kids now. Go to their parks, go to their churches, go to their rec centers, go to places they're at, advocate for them, show them that you care, like you're talking to a voter. Democrats like to say, cute baby, and then when they leave, they're not giving them campaign literature. They'll be able to vote next election, and you can't play them like they're not going to be able to.
Noah, what are you most optimistic about?
I'm most optimistic that we'll get the best nominees on the Democratic side. For Senate, well, we already have John Ossoff. I hope we get a good nominee for governor. There are some Democrats I would like to see primaried in Congress. Won't name names, but I think you can kind of catch who I'm talking to. He's very old, David Scott. And I think another thing I'm optimistic about is that my Democratic friends on the influencer side, and my other friends that have a platform will speak up for Democrats because they're the only party with a platform.
And I don't know if Noah's going to be running or taking our job here soon. A quick
We'll
programming note before we go next weekend. Due to NBC sports coverage, the Georgia Vote will air Saturday at 1 p.m. We hope to see you then.
We'll see you then.